everybody, and welcome back to Starting Six, a volleyball podcast with Haley and Liv. And we have an exciting and stacked episode because we finally got some really great volleyball. And on top of that, we got to watch a lot of it together.
We did. It was fun.
It was. We watched from a couple of bars. We watched from Taylor's apartment while we had a couple of drinks and some late night food. And yeah, it was just like a great way to watch some great games. But I think it's like only right that if you don't have anything else to chat about, we should dive right into what might have been the most surprising outcome of the weekend. And that would be Wisconsin playing at Purdue.
Yeah.
Now, if you didn't watch this game, I feel like if you didn't watch this game, you probably got on Instagram and saw the final score and went, what? Liv and I were very anxious about this game for a multitude of reasons, but Wisconsin ended up coming through for us and they ended up sweeping Purdue.
Yeah. Not the outcome we were anticipating at all.
No. And this was terrifying. Sorry. And this was terrifying for a multitude of reasons. And the first being that this was played at Purdue's Mackey Arena, which is where their basketball team plays. Now, I saw a comparison. I don't remember if it was during the game or maybe it was after, of the gym. Sorry, Ruger's like chugging his water. Please stop. The comparison between the gym that Purdue usually plays in, which I think holds at capacity, is under 3,000 people. And then to play in the Mackey Arena, which holds just under 15,000 people, is actually a crazy comparison.
Yeah, not only for Wisconsin to play in that atmosphere, but for Purdue, like that's got to be a shell shock for them. They're used to this tight-knit, like really close arena where all of the fans are cheering for them. Now they go to quadruple the size of it, essentially, and it can hold more fans, which means that there's more opportunity for Wisconsin fans to be there. And it's not that far away for Wisconsin fans to travel to. So I feel like that kind of brings a different element to it. Not only just like the atmosphere in general is a lot bigger and the sounds are different, the echoes, but it also leaves more room for different fan bases to come in and kind of mess, I guess, with your head.
Yeah, I definitely think that it was a lot for both teams, but actually, surprisingly, I feel like it was a lot for Purdue. Now this was their second game in this arena this year. They played Indiana and they swept Indiana. So this wasn't their first time in recent, I guess, times playing in the Mackey Arena. However, I think that the overall like pressure of this match, and I also just think that the overall pressure of the environment became kind of a lot for them. Now they sold out the Mackey Arena both nights. So I think their number they posted was 14,876. So that's 2 sellouts in back-to-back games played in this arena. But I think that the crowd for this game is a little bit different than it would be for Indiana because of the stakes of the rankings. And I think that kind of ended up getting in Purdue's head a little bit because they didn't quite look like themselves.
No, and I don't know if it was really credit to Wisconsin necessarily, or if it was just Purdue really didn't play up to their standard, which in my opinion, I feel like Purdue just didn't play up to their standard and Wisconsin played a little bit better than what they have been showing. And so a combination of that really secured that win for Wisconsin.
Yeah, so let's start on Purdue's side of the net. I was actually very shocked to see how much they were struggling with serve receive, specifically to their libero, which I think is a shell shock for any team. Like when your libero is, target number 1. But I just think that they were really struggling to get a ball in play that they could run somebody outside of their outsides. And unlike other teams we've talked about, Purdue does a pretty decent job at spreading the wealth, particularly between their 2 outsides and then Raven Colvin. But their other middle also had a pretty good game. So I think they really were trying to mix things up, really trying to shake Wisconsin's block. But because they couldn't really get a pass, they really had to rely on Eva and Chloe.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much more to say on that. I also think Purdue has been overall struggling with their serves all year. I think that's something that every team has been struggling with, oddly, but I think whenever they did get the point back or they were starting to go on a run, they would lose it by unforced errors, whether that's hitting out of bounds or serving out of bounds. I don't feel like they could ever get the momentum. And at times you could see it, but then some big, horrible error happened and then they lost it right away.
Yeah. The other part of Purdue's game that I found to be really interesting was them offensively. And so this is kind of a mixture of Purdue's side and Wisconsin's side of the net. But I thought that it was really interesting the way that Kelly Sheffield set up his block. I want to say, if I had to assume, he had the mindset of Eva Hudson is going to get kills. She's a bigger hitter than Chloe. She's a more, I guess, seasoned player, I guess you could say. She's going to get kills. She's a powerhouse. So he set up his block where he had Carter and or Devin, because he was rotating through, which we'll get to. He had Carter and Anna Smrek actually blocking Chloe for 2 rotations. And I thought this was an interesting choice because I feel like typically you would think that a coach would put that big, like his biggest block on their best hitter, which in my opinion is Eva. However, it was kind of a genius move because they completely shut Chloe down to the point where she couldn't get the ball over the net. So they completely took her out of the offense, knowing Eva's going to get kills. We still need to put up a good block on her, but that's going to happen. Let our defenders do some work. And he completely took Chloe Chacoin out of their offense.
Yeah, and I think in a way it kind of rattled Eva to a point because she did not have a great game. She was getting a lot of balls set to her when she was passing out of the right back and hitting out of the right side for 1 rotation. She was hitting out. She was getting blocked. Then they'd move her to the outside. She would serve receive from there. She would get blocked. She would hit it out. And they kept switching her back and forth. And they couldn't rely on Chloe Chacoin anymore in the back row or even in the front row because she was getting blocked. And I think in a way that rattled Eva to the point where she was in her head a little bit, knowing that she kind of had to carry the weight of the team because they couldn't set their middles and because Chloe wasn't producing at all, whether that's because of her not doing well or Wisconsin's block. And so I think, like you said, it was really interesting and not what I would have expected Kelly Sheffield to do, but in a way was genius because it worked out so well. And Purdue had no production out of any of their hitters, really. But again, that's a testament to Wisconsin's serve, which I think Charlie had a great serve. She was going on most of those runs. And usually we don't really see that from Wisconsin, I feel like, going on large serving runs. So it was nice to see them getting more confident behind the service line.
Yeah. So between serve receive and not being able to break through the block and then continuing to struggle behind the service line, Purdue really seemed rattled. Seemed like tensions were quite high for a team that usually plays really well as a unit. We've compared them to like Nebraska. It was a little bit of a shell shock, I think, for them. And I don't believe, from what I could tell from watching their side of the net, I don't believe it was handled in the best way to then try to make a comeback from it. So just a lot of things stacked against Purdue. But unfortunately, there's just games that you come out and you don't play well. But it was unfortunate that Kelly Sheffield designed a game plan that put Wisconsin ahead before the game even started. So I think that that's kind of, you know, a big part of it too. So let's switch over to Wisconsin's side of the net. Specifically, I want to talk about the controlled chaos that was happening on the Wisconsin side of the net in terms of the lineup. We've been talking about this all year. He's been quite inconsistent with the lineup he's been putting out. He makes a lot of changes during the game. And a lot of the time, it's just chaos, period. But I thought that when they played Purdue, it looked like controlled chaos. Now, if Purdue hadn't have been struggling so much on their own side of the net, I don't know exactly what the outcome of this game might have looked like. But I do think that Wisconsin looked, you know, to continue repeating myself, in control in a way that they haven't quite looked for pretty much any other game this year.
Yeah, I think what was different with Wisconsin's lineup changes from previous games, I mean, Kelly Sheffield was still changing in and out, Cece and Devin and Anna and Devin, all of those switches. But I felt like he was quicker to do it when they weren't producing, whether that was not closing the block or not producing on offense. Like in the beginning of set one, Devin's no, Cece started,
Mhm.
didn't close one of the first blocks, and then didn't close on a second one, out. Devin came in, there was like 2 or 3 blocks, and she was late and then was off the net. So the ball came right in front of her. So, and then he switched it again. And I think it looks really chaotic, but in a way, I think it helped in the long run because he didn't let those points like ruminate with them not
Mhm.
doing well. And then I think it kind of put a little spark in both of them to be like, shit, like, okay, he's not afraid to pull me if I'm not getting my act together. And I think
Yeah.
it lit a fire in both of them a little bit. And then after, first 10, 15 points in set one, I thought they both were playing really well. However, on the flip side, I don't always love when that happens because, hey, maybe it's one block I didn't get to, but then let me try again. And so you could
Yeah.
say that he was doing it a little too quickly and switching them out, or you can say that he was doing it right on time. I don't know. But I think against Purdue, it worked out. Again, like you said, if Purdue is playing how they usually do, I don't know if that would have been as successful as it was that game.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think that is kind of where the controlled chaos comes in, where
Mm-hmm.
it was chaotic and it did look chaotic, but they were able to get a grip on it quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand it as much. But I can't understand adjusting your lineup to the strengths of the other team. And I
Mm-hmm.
totally do get that. It just felt like so many subs and so many
Mm-hmm.
changes. And there was a lot of times during the game that I couldn't quite figure out why he was changing it. They were
Mm-hmm.
ahead by a lot. And I think that you and I have both had experience with you make one error and you're out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a difficult argument to defend as
Mhm.
well.
Mhm.
So I'm not quite sure. It ended up working out, but
Mhm.
the other part of steady controlled chaos was between, not shocking, Lola as Libero and Gigi as the DS. And there were multiple times where typically when Lola's a Libero, Gigi plays her defense in 5 when she's in the back row for Anna, and then Lola plays in right back. So I wasn't surprised to see that.
Mhm.
But then there were other rotations where they were switching, and Lola
Mhm.
was playing where liberos typically do in that back
Mhm.
5 zone, and Gigi was playing right back in 1. And
Mhm.
again, just feels a little chaotic. Like
Mhm.
I don't quite understand
Mhm.
the madness to it.
Mhm.
I don't know if it was putting Gigi, who he deems to be one of his best defenders, to cover the line for Eva, or go after
Mhm.
block touches. I'm not sure, but there
Mhm.
were a lot of times during the game where it was like you blink and they're switched, and
Mhm.
I don't quite understand adding that layer to the game.
Mhm. Now that you talk about it, and I wish I paid more attention because I know, well, we talked about that when we were watching, but now as I think back, I'm wondering if part of that was where they were serve receiving. If
Mm.
Lola was serve receiving out of right back, you have you're ready for a quick ball faster if you stay in that position than switching. And so I wonder if that was part of it, but I can't remember looking back. Like if it was based on where they were serve receiving, you're gonna play there, so we're not all switching and then not ready for a quick defensive ball. I don't know. In a way, that makes sense to me, but I've played libero, I've played DS, I've never done that before. So like, then it
Mm-hmm.
also doesn't make sense because I've never done that or like really heard of it. So I'm not sure. And now I'm gonna have to really pay attention to that if that's kind of what happens. But it would
Yeah.
be interesting if that's not what's happening. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that. I think for me, it's just, and maybe it's a little bit different, but to me, the way that you typically see defense in that 5 and in that one position is basically the same but mirrored.
Mm-hmm.
So you would think in your head that it probably wouldn't be that hard to do one or the other and continue to switch off doing one or the other. But I'm under the impression that is quite difficult because going from hitting outside to hitting right side, and yeah, it's just a mirror. It's quite different. And I would imagine defensively it's the same, especially when you're in that right back, you're defending mainly against the two best hitters on the other side of the court. Whereas when you're in that left back, even if those two best hitters are hitting at you, you have a little bit more time to react versus on the line. So I don't know. Maybe in my head it seems harder than it actually is. But to me, that does add another level of like, just jitteriness and wait, where are we supposed to be? Where are you supposed to be? So they handled it well, but to me, it just seems a little unnecessary. But he figured it out. He found something that worked for this game, and it's over, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, we got the win.
Yes. Okay, any more thoughts on that game?
No, I think Purdue will bounce right back, and I hope Wisconsin stays the course.
Yeah, they have a tough few weeks coming up. Okay, let's jump to the next game we got to watch together. This was a little later that night. Was Penn State at USC. I was honestly like really impressed with this game. I thought it was a good game. I'm not surprised by the outcome, which was Penn State winning in 4. But I did feel like this game kind of showed a little bit of Penn State's weaknesses, I guess you could say. Because to me, Penn State is a team that should have swept USC. And I think they should have swept quickly. So I think that Penn State's I think their travel schedule is starting to get heavy because they have been on the road like crazy. They have been playing they've been doing like back-to-back opponents in the locations that they've been going to. And for some reason, it feels like Penn State is traveling more than any other Big Ten. Like they are everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
So I definitely feel like that's starting to sink in a little bit. And I think that we're also, like we talked about this last year, we're hitting this point of the season where things are starting to drag a little bit. Physically, you're starting to feel things. Mentally, you're starting to feel things. This is kind of that time of year where the pressure sits in. Like, okay, everything we do from here on out matters so greatly. For a lot of girls, their time is winding down if they're seniors or fifth years. So I think that it's all kind of starting to set in a little bit. And I think that Penn State's game is looking like they're carrying a lot of that weight right now.
Yeah, I think the number one thing, and I'm a Penn State fan, so I don't want to be like, oh, their game is getting bad or anything, which I don't think. I think the time change, the travel, like you said, was the biggest factor in this match. USC was at home. Penn State had to cross over 2 time zones and was playing at 11 p.m. their time, whereas USC is playing at 8 p.m. their time. That is a big difference. Like you're staying up 3 extra hours just to start your match, right? And so if you still wake up at the same time, now you're extending your day for 3 more hours before you're even starting. They're not like, if we're still going into Penn State's time zone, they're not ending that match until 1 a.m. Right. So that is really hard to adjust to in a day, in 2 days, where USC definitely had the upper hand in that. And I think I agree with you about kind of that like mid-season slump and just, injuries, achiness, all of those things are kind of starting to come together with more people and more players on the team. And so I think overall we're going to be seeing that a little bit more often from every team, like girls just not playing at their max or teams just not looking as sharp as they should be at this time. But, they kind of go low and then they get higher as the season ends. So I personally wasn't too shocked just based on that travel factor that it did go to 4. But I didn't think necessarily that Penn State's game was any less. I thought USC played really well. I thought they had a chip on their shoulder and I thought they came to play. So that's just kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, totally fair. That travel schedule is really crazy with adding these 4 like West Coast teams.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely not easy. And I don't know why Penn State's just been like getting beat the hell up. It's like I don't know how they got the short end of that stick, but yeah, I agree. And with everything happening with their coaching staff, I think it's just starting to get heavy for them. But yeah, like I wouldn't say that they like played bad. I just think that the Penn State that we've been talking about all year probably could have gone in and kind of killed this team. Now, with USC, they have, in my opinion, 2 key components, and that's their setter and Allie Batenhorst on the outside. I think that those 2 really help keep the ship afloat. But yeah, I think that USC, in my opinion, in a lot of what we watched, they were struggling just a tad bit offensively, in the way that isn't necessarily like do or die. Like I don't think that that's necessarily like what killed them. I think Penn State's just kind of the better team. But I think that USC had a couple ruts that they got in where they just could not produce offensively. And I don't know if that's relying too much on Allie or if that's other girls simply not doing enough. I'm not quite sure what that looks like, but I do think that there was a couple ruts that they got in where it was like you need a first ball kill and you need it now. Like you got to figure it out. So I think that was kind of where some of that started, and I think that their serve receive was kind of another piece to that puzzle. But I agree. I think that out of all the USC games that I've got to watch this year, this was the most confident that they've looked. And it genuinely just seems like they enjoy each other's company and they have a lot of fun together, which I think always reflects on court play.
Yeah, definitely. I think Taylor made a comment like they just look like they're having so much fun. And yeah, I think you hit it. And I think Penn State had a pretty solid block on the outside too. I mean, Izzy Stark is their setter, but she was playing front row and she had quite a few block touches and their middles too. So I think Penn State's defense looked really well, like really solid against them. And so I think that's where USC kind of struggled offensively. Like you mentioned, the hits just weren't falling. The tips weren't falling. Like nothing wasn't going in their favor as much as it was Penn State. But I think that's credit to Penn State's defense, particularly their back row and their block. I thought they had some really solid blocks and block touches on there to help with that. But per usual, I think Penn State, relies heavily on Jess Merzick, but I thought their new setter, Izzy Stark, I mean, I think she's phenomenal. And she really was trying to get the right sides involved. Oh, what was her name? I said it when we were together because I can't remember her last name. Jervicius.
I don't know.
Their right side. Carolyn Jervicius. She's a transfer from Nebraska. And I thought she had a really nice game too. And I thought Izzy Stark was feeding her a lot more than I think we've been used to seeing Penn State setting the right side because of Jess Merzick. But I think that helps moving forward to give Jess less swings during the matches so she can last the rest of the year because she's a fifth year. Her body is given out just like the rest of the fifth years. So I think it's nice that we could see Penn State starting to kind of share the love with their right sides and they were producing. So it felt confident in their right sides.
Yeah, I agree. Penn State's definitely found their offensive groove in this year more than we've seen in a long time. And I do think it's so much credit to their setter Izzy. Like she's genuinely incredible and she's going to carry that program to like new heights every single year. So I definitely think the future is bright for Penn State, even with losing someone like Jess Merzick. Why was I going to say Jen? I don't know. Anyways, it'll be interesting to see her continue to grow in that position, kind of in the way that we're watching like Bergen Riley. I think that it's a very similar path that they're on, and I think that she does not get enough flowers for what she's been doing this year.
Yeah.
Okay, wrapping up the Penn State talk. Let's jump to a game that literally everybody who has been watching volleyball this season has been anticipating, and that's Louisville at Pitt. We all knew that this was going to be like an absolute battle, and that's exactly what it was. And Pitt ended up coming out on top in 5. But I was I don't know. I was really impressed with Louisville because I think that I don't know. I knew it was going to be a battle, but in my head, I was kind of thinking like a 4-set
Yeah.
battle. Like either Louisville was going to come out swinging and take set 1, or
Mhm.
they were going to try to grab like set 2 or 3, just hold on as tight as they can.
Mhm.
But Louisville this year has been quite a roller coaster, and so I didn't think they would really have the consistency and maybe even like the strength to
Mhm.
hit that 5-setter. But yeah, I'm not surprised at the outcome, but I actually was like a little bit surprised that it went to 5.
Mhm.
But maybe that's just like my opinion on Louisville. So that could be a me thing. I don't know.
No, I agree. And I mean, I think we both kind of had a sour taste with Louisville all year and probably years past too. So
Mhm.
in a way, I'm kind of always rooting for the other team. That sounds bad. Sorry, Louisville. You are a very good volleyball team. But in a way, I just want to like prove the point of like they are inconsistent. And I think that's where that kind of taste comes from.
Mm.
Um, but from what I could hear from like all of the commentators in later games of like Louisville when Louisville was playing SMU, they all thought that Louisville should have taken that 5th set, which I think is surprising to hear, considering Pitt is number 1, and
Yeah.
Louisville's number 4. So I don't know. They didn't necessarily say why. I think just the play and kind of the grittiness of the team was a little bit stronger than Pitt. So I don't know if that's why or what. But looking at the stats, I mean, Louisville actually like was spreading the wealth for that game. I mean, Anna DeBeer had 22 kills, not a shocker. They got their middles and their right sides involved, which I think has been something that we haven't seen in the past from Louisville. It's usually been the whole Anna DeBeer show the whole time. But they got Reese Robbins, their right side, involved a lot, and Kara Cressy was involved a lot too. So I think that played to their strength. But I mean, Pitt has so many powerhouses, like you just can't stop them. Even if you take them
Yeah.
to a 5th set and quote unquote should have won, like they are just so dominant that they're gonna just end it. Like I feel like Pitt gets to a point in the match when they're like, hey, screw this, like I'm sick of it, and they just like put the hammer down and they're like, screw you, you're losing, we're winning.
Yep, that's literally exactly what I was going to say. I think that what separates Pitt from Louisville is that, and the reason why Pitt has had such success this year, yes, they're stacked. They have
Mhm.
incredible defenders and they have a phenomenal front line of hitters, like phenomenal.
Yeah.
But I think what makes Pitt different from teams like Louisville and teams from like Nebraska, even, is that Pitt has a fire all the time. Their
Mhm.
success throughout this entire year has been because they go into every match like I want to pummel these people into the ground and remain number 1 and take it all the way.
Mhm.
You can tell
Mhm.
when you're watching them, they genuinely care so much about the outcome of these matches
Mhm.
that there's not one single person on that court that doesn't have the same mindset as the person next
Mhm.
to them. And that's what makes Pitt stand out. I
Mhm.
really truly think that. And I think that you're right. I think they got to a point where they were like, losing to Louisville could really mess up not only the rest of their season, but the
Mhm.
rest of their postseason. Like this could have really rattled
Yeah.
the path that Pitt is on and has been on. And I think they
Mhm.
got to a point where they looked at each other and they were like, enough. And
Yeah.
then they just went balls to the walls,
Mhm.
and then they ended up finishing on top. But I think that
Mhm.
too, something that we don't see a ton out of Pitt, in my personal opinion, is they had crazy success out of their middles as well.
Mhm.
So I think that
Mhm.
really this game was a battle of the offenses, and Pitt just
Mhm.
does a better job and has more experience, especially this year, of spreading the wealth and utilizing the hitters when they need to be utilized. Like I think
Mhm.
that's what Pitt does better than a lot of other teams offensively, especially teams like Louisville who rely so much on their outsides. Like
Mhm.
Pitt knows which setters or no, excuse me. Pitt
Mhm.
knows which hitters to set
Yeah.
at what times to find success, and that's why they are the way that they are.
Mhm. And I think too that makes it really hard to game plan and to watch film because you have to watch every single player. They don't have like their one. They don't have their two. That it's like, okay, we're just gonna set up block right here and we'll be fine. We're gonna defend cross instead of line or whatever it is. Like you can't really predict what Pitt is going to do because every single hitter is such a powerhouse, front row, back row. It doesn't matter. Like, you truly don't know where they're going to set. Even when they have an out of system ball, their setter is going to throw it wherever she wants to, and it's going to be a kill. So it makes it really hard to game plan and predict and practice it. And so I think that's a big strength to Pitt. And the only other team that does that really, I think, is Nebraska, and that's why they're 1 and 2. The rest have, like, you know, their number 1 and number 2 hitters, and so it's pretty easy to defend. And so I think that's what's going to be the most interesting whenever we see a Pitt Nebraska showdown, is no one's going to know who's getting the ball on either side.
No, and that's kudos to their setters too. They're the volleyball smarts that it takes to know and to be able to read a defense, to know, like, okay, I haven't set Olivia Babcock yet, or to set her and see her get blocked, and then to maybe set your middle and then go back to her. Like, they have such a plan on who to set and when to set them. And I just think that that's really where teams like that find success. And I think that's something that Louisville struggles with when comparing the two.
Yeah.
Oh man, Pitt. I'm excited to see what this postseason looks like. This could be really exciting compared to the last couple of years. Okay, last game we're going to recap here. A little bit of a shocker was Texas A&M at Texas. And Texas A&M upset in 5, right?
5. Yeah.
5, yeah. Yeah, so this comes as a shock to literally nobody, because we said Texas was going to take the conference, and that it'll be a pretty easy rest of the year for them. And then we hung up the call and saw this. Was it that night? I think. Yes, I think it was.
That night or next day.
Yeah. So, yeah, that part's a surprise to no one. But, yeah, Texas loves losing at home. It's like their favorite pastime.
Yeah. Yeah. No one else. Texas just likes to be unique, right? And they don't like home court advantage. It's not a thing to them. And I don't know why.
No.
I don't know if it's like the pressure of, like, we're Texas, we're at home, we have to win. But I feel like they've gotten off that train a long time ago. So I don't really know why that pressure would still be there or what it is. Like, their fans are too much for them, apparently. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know why they struggle so bad at home. But I didn't get to watch this game. Texas is a very hard team to watch, especially when they're going up against unranked opponents. They really don't air these games very much. So I did go and watch the highlights, though. Now, granted, I watched Texas A&M's highlights because those are the ones that popped up first. But I also came at that with the approach of, I know what Texas's strengths are. So I was really interested to see what Texas A&M's highlights in particular were. So that is the one I watched. And as I was listening to the call, Texas A&M had 8 aces. And I think the score was like 4-7 in set 3 when that was announced.
Damn.
And by the end of set 3, Texas A&M had 9 or 10 aces. So when you take that into consideration, that is 8 free points that were given. 8.
Yeah. It also, reading, like, the recap on Texas's page, you know, they're still gonna boost up the fact that they lost. But from what I can read is that it sounds like Texas A&M just really got off hot in every set from the beginning. Like, they had it, set 2, Texas A&M won the match 25-14, which is crazy to think. But then they go on these runs and take the lead and are by 3, 4, 5 points. And then Texas just can't get on a run themselves. So I don't know if that's unforced errors or Texas A&M's defense was just that good. I don't know what it is, but in every set, it looks like for the most part, they got out to a big lead in the beginning. And then Texas just always dragged behind and they couldn't get on a run.
Yeah. The other thing too I noticed while I was watching was Texas A&M had a lot of success on their opposite side. I think that's something too, and we talk about spreading the wealth, but I think when we refer to that, a lot of it is using your middles, which is a difficult thing to do. But I think that there's a lot of teams that kind of have it figured out on how to perfectly utilize a right side hitter. And Texas A&M is one of them. I think sometimes people forget technically, now this isn't, everybody, but when you have your blockers, your outside hitter is typically your smallest hitter and therefore probably your quote unquote weakest blocker. Statistically, hypothetically,
it's a fact. Just say a fact. A spade is a spade.
It kind of is. So I think that when teams find a right side that they have a lot of, confidence in, and has a lot of confidence in themselves, like specifically Minnesota's right side, Lydia Grote, they have insane success offensively because your outside struggles. And I think a lot of teams struggle to defend against a right side hitter too, Merritt Beeson. And I think that Texas A&M just had it figured out. A lot of the highlights that I watched were coming off of the opposite side kills.
Yeah, that's awesome. Keep going.
No, you go. This is not relevant. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was going to say it also then when your outside is blocking, it's a little bit harder for them to transition to get like behind the 10-foot line, have a good transition swing. Especially if it's an out of system ball, you have to get farther back off the 10-foot line to really take your approach. And if Maddie Skinner or Jenna Wennis is blocking, they really have to book it because odds are it's going to be an out of system ball and then the setter is going to set them no matter what. And so it just kind of ruins the flow. Whereas if your outside is playing off blocker defense, it's a little bit easier, or they can transition into like a 3-ball 32 or a 2-ball. And so coming like from experience, blocking and then getting your butt back there is really hard, knowing that you're going to get the ball. And so I think that might be a bit of a challenge too that Texas had, especially if Texas A&M was using the right side so heavily. You're winded, you catch up, like you're out of breath, you can't hit well. So that's just, I don't know. I didn't get to watch it, so just a thought on it.
Yeah, and two other pieces on that actually as you're talking about it. So when your outside and your middle are blocking, your right side hitter is technically playing offside or off
block defense.
Off block. Thank you. I was going to say offsides and I was like, that's not right. Off block defense on the 10-foot line. Now your right side hitter is in a lot of cases your taller hitter and they don't typically play defense. So you have a weak defender in that spot. Then your cross court shot is usually your setter who is if they're in the back row. That's also a very weak defender compared to probably the other 6 rotation outside and or a DS and your libero. So that whole side of the court is your 2 weakest defenders.
Yeah.
So and we don't see that when the outside's going as much. You usually have an outside who's doing off block defense, typically a pretty decent defender. You have your libero who's in your cross spot, which is the easiest direction to hit. You have an outside that's covering your 6 is probably or a DS who's very comfortable in that position. And then you have to really crank it down the line while getting past a block to aim at that set. So I think it's a lot different of a look for a right side hitter. You have 2 weak defenders to aim at, and hitting that cross is your easiest shot. So I think that all plays into play when you have a successful and a really strong right side hitter. So I think that's kind of the balance of that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, interesting to see, but shocker to nobody that we compliment Texas and then they lose. So
yeah.
Okay. That's all I have. Is there any other games you wanted to touch on?
No, I don't think so. Most of the rest of them I think were pretty predictable from what I remember.
Although Florida State did get upset by North Carolina. But
that is true.
We talked about that, and North Carolina's high up in the conference, so not overly surprising.
No.
Okay, let's get into Player of the Week. I feel pretty good about mine. Nothing like overly crazy and statistically wild, but I think that she deserves a shout out. So my Player of the Week is going to be Carter Booth. I think that especially when we talk about Wisconsin, Devin Robinson is everything. So I wanted to mix it up a little bit and give Carter her flowers. She did hit her 600 career flaws.
400. Cece got her 600.
400. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
400, and she's a junior.
Yeah.
So that's pretty crazy to me. She's also a junior that did not play her freshman year. Right?
I thought she was a sophomore.
No, she's a junior.
She is a junior? No, she was at Minnesota her freshman year. Then she transferred.
There.
That's why I think because she's only played 2 years. This is her second
Thank you.
year at Wisconsin.
Thank you. Yes, that's what I was thinking. So she didn't play when she was a freshman at Minnesota.
No, I think she got it in a little. Yeah.
Yeah. So taking into consideration about 2 years, that's 200 kills a year. That's pretty freaking crazy.
Yeah.
Or 200 blocks a year. So I think that's pretty crazy. I just think she deserves a shout out for it. And I thought that against Purdue was the best she's looked all year.
Yeah. Okay.
I thought she looked confident. I thought she looked like a major offensive threat. I thought that her and Charlie are really starting to connect. Again, Charlie's so young. So it's really on the hitter to work with her to get her where she needs to be in order for the hitter to be where they need to be. And I thought that against Purdue, Carter was a big asset in the win. And I thought that this was the best she's looked so far this year.
Okay. I am giving my flowers to a position that I don't think that we've really talked about much in the libero jersey. Even though we've been kind of trashing Louisville a little bit, I'm giving my flowers to Elena Scott, their libero. I think she is one of the most underrated volleyball players in the country right now, and has been the last year, 2 years. We always talk about Lexi Rodriguez as, she's phenomenal, right? I don't want to discredit her at all. But some of these other liberos I think are personally just as good as her and just as scary of defenders as she is. And Elena Scott, I think, is so dominant back there, and she is not afraid to throw her body. I mean, usually no libero is, but she's throwing her body and getting up perfect balls. I watched Louisville play SMU, and every single dig was Elena Scott, Elena Scott, Elena Scott. She was throwing her body. She had some huge plays in that game, and also she was a setter in high school, so her second balls are phenomenal. She is really setting up their offense. Starting from defense, she's putting a good ball up there. And when their setter is taking the first ball, she's putting a great second ball up there. And I just don't think that we talk enough about the liberos and the defenders. And we're kind of always talking about, the hitters and the setters and stuff like that. And I've been there when, you don't get the credit as a libero or DS. It kind of sucks in a way, but also it's a given because you're setting up your hitters to be successful. And so naturally you're getting recognized. That's what coaches always tell you. If you're wearing the libero jersey, you're already recognized because you stand out. But it's okay, I still would like to say get a good job, a high five or something. Just because I wear a different jersey doesn't mean that's all the praise I need. And so I thought she played really well against SMU, and she was diming every serve receive ball. I mean, phenomenal. So I've always been impressed with her. She's gorgeous too. So good for you, girl.
All around must be nice. Nice. She also did take a huge swing off the face. It might have been a high shoulder, but it looked like her face from, I think it was Olivia Babcock. So anyone who can take a swing from one of the best hitters in the country to the noggin and continue to play the rest of the game deserves flowers for sure.
Yeah.
Love it. Great pick. Okay. All right. Start and bench. What shall we do first?
Let's do bench first.
Okay. My bench isn't overly crazy, but it is something that really did bother me about the weekend, and that's SMU not going to 5 with Louisville. Now, it's unfortunate scheduling that Louisville played Pitt first, because losing to them probably lit a fire under their ass to the point where they were like, okay, no more of that. But I just felt with all the hype on SMU and them being at SMU, that they could maybe try to pull one out. But unfortunately that wasn't the case. But it was a 4-setter, so I'm happy it wasn't a sweep, but I would have really liked to see that game get dragged on just a little bit more, just to continue to spice things up. I don't want the remainder of the season to be predictable. I don't want the postseason to be predictable. So I was looking for a 5-setter, but unfortunately that was not the case. And it just really bugged me. So that's what I chose as my bench this week.
My bench, we've talked about it quite a bit throughout all the games, but my bench is the missed serves from every team in the country.
Oh, God.
I don't know if I just never really paid much attention to it before, or if it's really just gotten this much worse. But like, serving is the one thing you actually can control. Solely you. It's not a team effort. It's only you. You practice it a million times every week, and then you go up and you miss your dang serve. Why?
I know.
I get sometimes bad tosses, whatever, but missed serves are contagious. They truly are. When one team misses their serve, the next almost always does. And then you have to go through like 3 or 4 missed serves before you get back into it. And like you lose so much momentum from missed serves. I get like the high risk, high reward system, but like you should be going based off like every missed serve, you should be getting an ace. And I don't think that's been the situation for any team, really. I think it's been 5 missed serves to 1 ace. And you're never going to win the game. Purdue did that. So many other teams have lost strictly because of serves. And I hate it. Like, I truly hate it because it ruins the flow of the game. And again, they're contagious. So then you have to sit there just watching missed serves. And like, I really freaking hate when they're in the net. I'm like, just over and in, please.
I know. Right. And that's the thing about serving. And so much of volleyball is skill. Like, it's a really crazy sport, but there are also fundamentals to the game, and serving is fundamental. And frankly, your serve is the one part of this game you can fully control. You have full control. You are the only person doing this action. Like, this to me, serving is the fundamental piece of volleyball. And I just think that to see so much of it this year in particular, like, and I'm not talking about the missed serves that are like, oh, you're aiming for an end line and it's literally this far out, or the ones that get challenged. Like, I'm not talking about that. I mean, girls are literally bombing serves out of bounds. Like, they're hitting the back of the sport court. Like, it's so bad. And so it's just like one of those things where I don't know what like bug went around and made everybody be terrible at serving, but it does suck. And it really does suck the way that it interrupts not only them playing the game, but it interrupts us as viewers too. Like, it's like, oh my God, like, figure it out. And the way that it's happening in these crucial moments, especially in the net, has really been frustrating to watch. I don't know what happened. It's like an epidemic. Like, what's going on?
Like the Purdue USC game, their 4th set went to 32, and every third point was a missed serve. Like, from 23 to 32, there was probably 6 missed serves in there. And I'm like, you guys, you were both tied. You're at match point, whatever, and you missed your serve. Like, come on. I get there's a little bit of pressure, but seriously, just over and in. You have better chances defending the ball than not even giving them a chance to send the ball over. Like you said, it's different if it's a really aggressive serve and it's inches away, or the player could have gone for it, but they just, by the love of God, didn't. But no, that is so obvious that there's not even a chance someone's going to go for it. And that's the difference between like a good missed serve and a bad missed serve. And they're all bad missed serves. And it's really pissing me off.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's a bench for like the whole year. Like, it's a year-long bench. Awesome. Love it. Okay, my start is something I have never started before. I've only benched this, especially with this team, actually, which is kind of funny. But I'm going to start Nebraska's all-black uniforms that they wore when they played Ohio State. They looked incredible. Now, I usually shit on Nebraska's uniforms because of those stupid long socks. But I'm obsessed with their all-black look. The pictures looked phenomenal. I don't know what it was. Like, maybe it was like Harper Murray's dark hair with the all black. And then some girls wear like the one leg sleeve. And so that was all black. It looked crazy good. Like, I really, really liked it. So if you haven't seen those, I would definitely take a look on their Instagram. But it was particularly, I saw them when they played Ohio State. I think it was last week or maybe 2 weeks ago now. But yeah, obsessed. I wish they wore
Mhm.
those all the time. I love them a lot.
Yeah, that was good. Um, my start, kind of going back on SMU. My start is their right side, Naya Smai. I think I say that right. She popped off against Louisville, and that's really the game that I wanted to like point out for her.
Mm.
She had a really great game, and I think she really challenged Anna DeBeer and Charity Looper on the outside. She had 7 blocks. 7 block
Oh
assists as
wow.
a right side. That's pretty crazy. You usually see those 7 block assists from a middle. She also contributed 14 kills throughout the match. And I think she was just kind of this like little secret sauce type thing. Like she was just sprinkled in there every once in a while. And she really played, I thought she played really well and really challenged not only Louisville's outside hitters from her block perspective, but also their defense from her hitting perspective. And kind of like we mentioned, from when you have a very productive right side hitter, it challenges their backcourt defense and then has a ripple effect into their front row offense. And so I thought she played really well. And she's have been, oh my goodness, has been having a very good year this year. She had her season high for kills. She had 20 kills against Pittsburgh. So that's pretty impressive against Pitt. For a right side, having 20 kills. Her season high for digs was 11, and that was against Stanford. So she's putting up really big numbers against good teams, whether they're winning or losing. But I thought her play against Louisville, even though they did lose, was really impressive for a right side hitter.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good pick. And they really just have like a team of starters across the bench, including their head coach, who literally could definitely win Coach of the Year. Like
Yeah.
what she's done with that program, and just this year in particular, is actually insane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, love it. Great picks. Let's round out the episode. One, I don't really want to talk about the rankings because there wasn't a ton of movement. However, Wisconsin did move up to number 7. So just want to point that out because I'm excited about that. So a couple upcoming games to keep your eye out. Really, the fun starts on Friday, the 1st, which is just a big old bummer because I have to work. But I will be carving out as much time as possible. Nebraska is at Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really excited about that. It's number 2 versus number 7. I'm nervous, but I feel good after Purdue. So we're going to see what happens there. So that's Friday at 8 p.m. Central. I'm assuming that's going to be on a major network. Not sure which one, but that one will be available, I'm sure, for everybody to watch.
Yeah.
On Saturday, Arizona State and Utah play. So that's number 13 and number 22. I think that'll be a pretty good one. I believe on Thursday, which is Halloween, Arizona State plays BYU, and BYU is number 20. So I think that could be a pretty good one as well. And then also on Saturday, just for funsies, I don't think we'll be able to watch. I'm assuming it'll be on the ACC NX or whatever it's called. But Louisville plays Notre Dame, and Notre Dame has kind of been making a little bit of a name for themselves. So that's always interesting. I feel like Louisville sometimes stumbles against unranked opponents.
Yeah.
So that could end up having an interesting outcome. I'm not sure. On Sunday at noon, Stanford plays Florida State. I would imagine that game will have a pretty easy outcome, but I haven't really got to see Stanford do too much. So I would be interested to see how that goes. And then at 11 a.m., Georgia Tech, number 16, plays UNC, who's number 25. So I'd actually be interested to catch that game because that's 2 teams that I haven't got to see this year. So that could be really interesting. But that's kind of it. I think that Wisconsin-Nebraska game is going to be the big one.
Yeah, and I think that's really going to jumpstart the remainder of the season for the Big Ten, and like all the fun kind of happens for them this week and then next week. And then it really is kind of balls to the walls for all conferences, not only the Big Ten. But I think it really jumpstarts with that Nebraska Wisconsin game. And it's been sold out probably since 2 minutes after they put the tickets out. So if you're going, have fun. I'm jealous. But I had no hope in trying to get tickets because everyone else got on it way too quickly.
I know. I feel like I ran out my luck with tickets with Taylor Swift to like where now it's like anytime I try to get tickets to anything else, the universe is like, we've given you enough. Like you don't get any more. And the resale is just ridiculous to go to a game in the field house. So, you know, all love, all respect, but I'm not paying that much money to sit in that arena. So in GA. So yeah, that won't be happening, but I'm excited to watch and I'm happy that it's at 8. I don't know. I like that little later start. But yeah, it's going to be a sports filled evening for me, but I will be carving out time to watch that game. So fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that rounds out another episode of Starting Six. And next week we'll either be beyond cheerful or really devastated. So
or we might just not even record. We'll see.
Yeah. We might be skipping next week for our own mental well-being. So stay tuned to see what happens. And as always, thanks for watching.
Yes.